All right, so today we're going to be diving into something pretty interesting. It's the connection between stress and diabetes.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to be taking a cue from Dr. Neha Chawla. You might know her on Twitter as @TheStrongDoc. She's kind of a leading voice when it comes to diabetes care, and she's really dropped some truth bombs about how stress affects blood sugar.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? Most of us think of stress as, a mental thing. We
Yeah.
get a little frazzled. Maybe we're a little more irritable than usual. But Dr. Chawla's post really emphasizes that stress actually has like a physical impact on our
Yeah.
body, especially when it comes to blood sugar control, which is a key factor if you're managing diabetes.
Right. Yeah, and it's like we all know that stress is bad, but we don't really understand maybe the extent to which it affects blood sugar.
Right.
So Dr. Chawla poses this question: why is stress management so important for diabetics?
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty simple question, but there's got to be more to it.
There is, absolutely. So when we're stressed, our body goes into this fight or flight mode,
Right.
and it releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are designed to give us like a quick burst of energy so we can tackle whatever challenge we're facing.
Right.
But for someone with diabetes, this can cause like a sudden spike in blood sugar. That can be difficult to control.
So it's like our body's natural survival mechanism,
Exactly.
kind of backfiring on us in modern times.
It is. And it's not just about like the immediate spike.
Right.
Those stress hormones that we talked about, they actually make our body less sensitive to insulin.
Mm.
Insulin's a hormone that helps our cells absorb sugar from the blood.
Uh-huh.
And so over time, if that stress becomes chronic, it can actually lead to something called insulin resistance.
Okay.
And that's where your cells are basically struggling to absorb glucose, and that leads to consistently high blood sugar.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
And so is that kind of where those cravings for sugary comfort foods come in
you got it.
when we're stressed?
When we're stressed, our brain is craving a quick hit of dopamine, that feel-good chemical.
Yeah.
And we often find it in like high-carb, sugary snacks. But it gets even more intricate than that. Chronic stress can disrupt a very complex system in our body
Okay.
called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA axis for short.
Oh, the HPA axis.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. It's
Yeah.
like the central command for how our body deals with stress, right?
You got it.
Mm.
So when this system is constantly in overdrive because of chronic stress, it kind of throws a wrench in a lot of things. It messes with your sleep cycle, it disrupts how your body processes sugar, and it even increases your risk of developing insulin resistance.
Wow.
And then there's also the issue of oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress.
Okay.
That one sounds a little intimidating.
So think of it this way. It's like our body's rusting from the inside out.
Okay.
When we have prolonged stress, it creates this overload of harmful molecules.
Uh-huh.
And these molecules can actually damage our cells, including the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin.
Right.
This damage just further fuels insulin resistance, making it even harder for your body to regulate blood sugar. So it's kind of this cascade of negative effects.
So it's safe to say that stress plays a pretty big role in managing diabetes.
It's not just a role, it can be a game changer.
Oh, wow.
Dr. Chawla points to studies that show that people dealing with high stress are 45% more likely to develop type 2 diabetes.
That's a crazy stat.
Yeah,
Yes, huge.
it's huge. And so for someone with diabetes, managing stress isn't just about feeling better mentally.
Right.
It's about protecting their physical health.
Yeah, it really drives home the point that this is a serious issue.
Absolutely. And that brings us to Dr. Chawla's next point, the nitty-gritty of how stress actually raises blood sugar. So let's unpack that a bit further.
Okay.
So you remember those stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline that we talked about?
Yeah.
They're the key players in this blood sugar roller coaster.
Okay.
They kind of have a two-pronged attack.
All right, so how do they actually raise blood sugar?
Okay, so first they send a signal to your liver telling it to release stored glucose into your bloodstream.
Interesting. So my body thinks it needs this sudden energy boost, even if the threat is just like, a work deadline or something like that.
Exactly. And the second part of that attack is that these hormones also block the action of insulin.
Oh, wow.
So even if your pancreas is doing its job and producing enough insulin, your body's less responsive to it,
Huh.
making it even harder to move that glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells.
It's like a double whammy.
Exactly.
You got more glucose flooding the system and less ability to actually use it effectively.
Exactly. And if that stress becomes chronic, this can lead to higher fasting blood sugar levels over time. But we also talked about how stress leads to some not so healthy habits.
Oh, yeah, for sure. When I'm stressed, I definitely reach for the sugary snacks, and I'm definitely not hitting the gym.
It's common. Like willpower goes out the window.
It's a common experience.
Yeah.
Stress can really like derail our healthy habits.
Yeah.
And when you combine those not so ideal food choices with reduced physical activity, it just adds fuel to the fire.
Right.
And then there's also the impact on sleep. Ugh, don't even get me started on sleep. Stress messes with my sleep schedule big time.
It's a vicious cycle. Lack of sleep can throw off your hormonal balance,
Right?
including the hormones that regulate blood sugar. So stress disrupts sleep, which messes with blood sugar, which leads to more stress, and the cycle continues.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another. And where does that inflammation we talked about fit into all this?
That's a great question. So chronic stress, it promotes inflammation throughout the body.
Right.
And this inflammation actually contributes to insulin resistance, making it harder for your body to regulate blood sugar.
Yeah, wow.
And to make matters worse, inflammation can also damage the beta cells in your pancreas.
Yeah.
Those are the crucial cells that produce insulin.
It really is crazy how all these things are connected. It
Yeah.
really paints a picture of why stress management is so crucial
Yes.
for people with diabetes.
It is.
It's not just about, your mental well-being. It's like a key part of staying physically healthy and keeping blood sugar under control.
Precisely. And Dr. Chella also brings up another important point, the impact of stress on glucose variability. This basically means that stress can cause those unpredictable swings in your blood sugar levels,
Okay.
making it even harder to manage your diabetes.
So even if you're doing all the right things, you're eating right, you're exercising, you're taking your
Yeah.
medication,
Yeah.
stress can still, throw a wrench in the system.
Unfortunately, yes.
Mhm.
And that's why it's so important to understand the science behind stress and diabetes.
Right.
When you actually understand how stress physically affects your body and how it affects blood sugar control,
Mhm.
you can start taking more proactive steps to manage it.
Knowledge is power in this case.
Exactly.
The more we know about how stress affects our bodies, the better we can be at managing it.
Exactly. And Dr. Chella also points out that this stress-induced rise in blood sugar, it's actually an evolutionary adaptation.
Oh, okay.
It's meant to give us like a boost of energy to deal with like life or death situations.
Like back in the day when we were running from saber-toothed tigers and stuff.
Ex-
Yeah, a little boost of energy would be helpful in that situation.
Exactly. But in today's world, we're bombarded with stressors constantly.
Yeah.
And most of these stressors don't require that kind of intense physical response.
Right.
And for people with diabetes, this constant activation of the stress response can actually be harmful.
Yeah, we can't exactly outrun every deadline or every traffic jam.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So we really need to find ways to manage stress that are more aligned with our modern lives.
Right.
And while we'll dive into specific strategies for managing stress in our next deep dive,
Okay.
Dr. Challa really reminds us that understanding the science is the first step.
Got it. Okay, so we've really dug deep into the science behind how stress affects blood sugar.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what's the big takeaway here? Why should our listener care about all of this?
Well, the most important thing to remember is that our mental and physical well-being are like deeply interconnected.
Right.
For someone who's managing diabetes, stress isn't just an emotional burden. It's a physiological force that directly impacts their blood sugar.
Right.
Understanding that link is the first step toward taking charge of both your mental and your physical health.
It's like Dr. Chawla said, understanding the science
Uh-huh.
makes us more vigilant about our mental well-being.
Exactly.
It's not just about feeling good. It's about taking care of our physical health,
Exactly.
especially when it comes to blood sugar.
And this awareness is powerful.
Right.
It empowers you to be proactive about managing stress and reducing its impact on your diabetes.
Right.
We can't eliminate stress completely. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But we can equip ourselves with the tools and the knowledge to handle stressful situations in a healthier way.
And that's a perfect segue to Dr. Chawla's next post,
Yeah.
where she'll be sharing practical strategies for stress management.
Uh-huh.
And we'll be exploring those in our next deep dive, so make sure to tune in for that.
I'm looking forward to uncovering those strategies.
Me too.
It's one thing to understand the science, but putting that knowledge into action, that's where the real transformation happens.
Absolutely. In the meantime, if you want to learn more from Dr. Chawla,
Yeah.
you can find her on Twitter at @thestrongdoc.
Great.
She also writes some incredibly insightful articles about health and longevity on Substack as The Strong Doc.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
And of course, for everything related to fitness and health,
Yes.
FreeGym is an amazing resource. They're doing really incredible work to democratize knowledge and make it accessible for everyone.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.